Scientology's recruitment process depends greatly on two logical fallacies, which many people easily fall into: appeal to emotion and appeal to authority. For anyone unfamiliar, appeal to emotion simply means that rather than use facts or evidence to convince someone, they're instead told that if something feels good or feels right, it must be true. There are lots of variations on this, of course, and including examples where the opposite of this is true, where if something makes you fearful or produces some other kind of an emotional response, there must be something to it. And maybe it's valid or maybe it's true because look what it's doing to you. Appeal to authority is when you take someone's word or testimonial as true or probably true because you've been convinced that their statements should be true based on their knowledge or their experience or their background or something like that. There are plenty of examples where it's not necessarily wrong to do this, but there are also plenty more examples where it can be a disaster to blindly accept anyone's word as law. So, here's what happens when someone comes in to a Church of Scientology to find out what it's all about. This, by the way, is an actual photo of the reception area of the Church of Scientology at Las Vegas. And they've been beefing up and renovating and improving their church buildings as an international effort since 2004 to make them look very appealing and very high-tech, and they're actually very nice buildings. It's about the only thing that's nice about them. Now, most of the conversation when you walk in here revolves around you. Who you are, what your background is, what you do for a living, and that sort of thing. Not only are they getting information about you, but they're also prospecting you to see whether you're going to be a paying customer or not. If you are broke, out of a job, or have some kind of obvious mental problems, they want to show you the door just as quick as they can. You're not going to find anyone in Scientology interested in you if you can't pay for books or services. They are not a charity. Something else that they will also often do before getting into this too far is they'll ask you, what do you have heard or know about Scientology? The idea is to find out if you have any preconceived notions, internet information, or have encountered anything negative about it. They want to find out about that right away. And, you know, as the years have gone on, more and more people who walk into their buildings have plenty to say about that. Some people haven't heard anything, but obviously at this point a lot have. What they want to do is they want to allay your fears and convince you that what you've heard about them is not true. And so here you are standing in this nice building, you walk in there, and there's these friendly people smiling at you and talking in a very friendly way. And also, the people that they have out front usually know what they're doing, and they're very warm and very inviting, and they always put their best looking people on the front lines to attract new members. There's no bruises or scars, and no one's beaten up on anyone, and everyone seems very happy. It's easy in that kind of environment to shrug off anything you might have heard or read on the internet, and especially when you have these confident, attractive people look at you and say, well, I've never heard of any space aliens. Or, you know, people will say anything on the internet. You can't trust everything you read. And also, of course, haters are going to hate. So, the reason they can tell you with a straight face those kind of things is because usually they're telling the truth from their own experiences. Most lower level staff, like the kind you're going to encounter when you go into a lower level organization like the Church of Scientology of Las Vegas or Denver or Minnesota, is those staff members truly have never heard of Xenu or space aliens or any of the more fantastic science fiction stuff, because that information within the Scientology world is kept confidential. And it's only reserved for the highest levels of Scientology. Only about 1% of the people who are in Scientology have actually attained those levels. It takes years to get there, and usually about $250,000, before Xenu even comes up. And unlike out here in the real world, they don't talk within the Scientology bubble world about these things. The word Xenu was a word I never heard until after I got out. And I've been in Scientology for 27 years. They are very good at keeping their own secrets. The rest of the world knows more about Scientology than the people who are in Scientology. The abuses, the human trafficking, and that sort of thing is what goes on at the upper levels of Scientology, and in a group called the Sea Organization, S-E-A, Sea as in Navy. And that kind of thing doesn't happen at the local city level organizations. So on the front lines, when they tell you that they haven't heard or seen any of the stuff that you read on the internet, they're not always lying. It doesn't mean it's not all true. I lived it because I was at those upper levels. And I can tell you that I experienced those human rights abuses that you read about. And they are real, and they do happen. Now, getting back to this introduction, whether you're broke or not, they usually want you to do what they call a personality test. That's a picture of one. Remember what I said about the appeal to authority? Well, it starts right at the beginning, because they actually call these personality tests Oxford Capacity Analyses, or OCAs. Now, this test never, ever had anything to do with Oxford University in England. And they just use words like that to make it sound official. The OCA, this personality test, is one of the primary means that Scientology uses to sucker people in to take services. It consists of 200 pretty odd questions about yourself and your life. And what they do is that you answer those questions and they score the answers in order to graph your personality and tell you about yourself. Some of the questions, for example, are, do you sleep well? And the questions are all yes, maybe, and no, right? So those are your choices. So do you sleep well? Or do you spend much time on needless worries? Or do you browse railway timetables, dictionaries, and things like that for fun? And the graph has lines to measure your happiness, responsibility level, communication, and other personal traits. That's a picture of the graph. And the lines on the graph, and then those little circles are something that somebody drew on it when they were doing the evaluation to tell the person that the first 3 traits have to do with you, and the middle 3 traits have to do with your life, and the last 3 or 4 traits there have to do with your interaction with other people. It all looks very scientific, and it's not at all. But people who don't know much about science or about psychology or how these things actually are put together would look at this and think, oh, well, this is pretty fancy. You know, these guys must really know what they're doing. So they sit you down and they go over these results with you. And it's basically one step up from a cold reading, which is the kind of thing that psychics do when they sit you down and start telling you about yourself. That's cold reading. They don't know anything about you. This is more of a warm reading because they've been talking to you already and they've been getting information from you. And the graph does, you know, the scoring is done in such a way that you actually can tell some things about somebody. Nowhere near the level of accuracy that they pretend it is, but you open up and you start talking to them. And so the whole point there is getting you to open up. And because when you're sitting there with them, you've already invested the time in answering 200 of these questions, which takes about an hour to do. And you walked in there in the first place, you're already invested in wanting to know about yourself. So most of the time, people do open up and they do start talking. What they want is the thing that you want to change or improve about yourself. If I asked you right now, what is ruining your life? Or what is it about yourself that you really don't like that you'd like to change? The answer would be what they call in Scientology your ruin. That's the term they use, is they're looking for your ruin. Very few people don't have an answer to that question. I've never met anyone who's totally satisfied with everything that they have going on in their life. Everyone's aware of their own insecurities and their doubts and their fears and their inadequacies. Now, the magic moment tends to be right there. They get you to tell them what your ruin is, or they guess at it, using this graph, until they get something that you can agree with, and then they spring this on you. Scientology can handle that for you. So here you are, you've been going along for years, or maybe your entire life with this ruin, and you haven't had any idea how to resolve it, otherwise you would have. And now, here's a solution for you. If they've done their work right, as the evaluators, then they've got you in an emotionally vulnerable moment, where you've established a rapport and you trust this person who's doing this evaluation on you. Those are the appeals to emotion and the appeals to authority that they're trying to establish so that you will accept what this person is telling you is true. This solution that they offer you is usually a short course or a series of counseling sessions that they say will deal with this problem and make you feel all better or give you the tools that you need to overcome whatever the problem or the insecurity or the issue is. Now, most of the time, most of what they call the basic or first level services that they offer are based wholly on common sense. And they've been reworded. Hubbard wrote all this stuff, and he reworded it in such a way that it sounds like there are these big revolutionary concepts. Especially because of the way that L. Ron Hubbard could write, and he was a prolific writer. It was his one actual ability that sustained him through his entire life, was his ability to write. You don't necessarily have to write like all of his fiction work. I couldn't stand a lot of it, even when I was in. But his ability to write pseudoscience is amazing. So he would always make things sound like he was the only one who could figure this stuff out. And he said he had done years of research and all of his discoveries worked, whereas no one else's did. And this is also part of the indoctrination in Scientology. They work very hard from the beginning to get you in a frame of mind where you think that everything in Scientology is original and new and has never been seen before. That it's all the work of this one genius man, L. Ron Hubbard, and that anyone who is against it is only criticizing it because they don't want you to get better.